Welcome to Memory Matters for All Ages. I'm Janelle Nichols from the Gables of Hudson Assisted Living Residence. I want to welcome back, as usual, Kathy Kilpatrick, a speech-language pathologist with over 40 years of experience, national speaker, author of over 30 publications. I know you just have had some wonderful speaking opportunities that I've heard wonderful things about.
Thanks.
And today, we're going to talk about medication and finances. No, not the high cost of prescription meds. We're going to talk about red flags, especially at the holiday times, when families are together, when families who live out of town are back to see mom and dad or see family members that they haven't seen for a while, and they're noticing red flags, things that have changed. Kathy?
Well,
am I right on there?
Oh my! Well, you see it as well, and I think to comment about the presentations that I've done, and I've been in a variety of areas speaking to a variety of audiences about people with dementia, because I do home health care, and the experience that I've had, including walking the journey with my mom, has just been an amazing, amazing experience. And so sharing that, and it's interesting, I was telling you earlier in my talks, I kind of do a consensus, how many people are there personally or professionally, and I'm noticing more and more people have issues. I did a talk the other day, and the gentleman said, oh, this was so helpful and very interesting, and then he put, and things I can use with my family. So this program is going to be way more kind of like, I'm going to give you a bunch of information because there's a lot to cover, and I really invite you to go to the website because there are a lot more links. These things are really, really important, because what families usually say, or my clients or patients will say, oh, I'm fine.
Right.
Well, medications and finances are not things you really want to fool around with.
Well, as in referencing information that Kathy was talking about, stay tuned at the end of the broadcast, and you'll see Kathy's website information and her blog information there. You can contact her, you can get more information. So watch all the way to the end of the program. But Kathy, what are some things that families should watch for?
Okay. Really important. So if we're talking about medications, all right, if someone has frequent changes in medication, and you've got an older adult that, you know, may have some medical issues, and we're talking, you know, mild dementia here to maybe a little bit more involved, if it isn't a red flag, it's going to be a red flag, and the best thing to do is to take a look at the bigger picture. Often when I go into homes, I'm already seeing issues, you know, and so they may have trouble reading the bottles. They may be mixing up the medications. I had one woman who didn't want to switch to a pill box, which I recommend earlier rather than later. And for some, that can even be a problem if they live by themselves. I had a gentleman that would flip open, you know, each one of the things and dump all the pills out and then kind of rearrange them in whatever order he wanted to do. But if nobody's there, they don't know. This one woman said, I don't need this, I know what I'm doing. And what was happening by not having them in a pill box, she was double dosing on a medication in the evening, which is why she was so foggy until about noon every day. And we don't realize those kinds of things. Then it may be that they're not aware of the date or the day of the week, and what that can be a real problem. I had a gentleman who lived alone, and we finally got him from the pill bottles to the pill box, but then he wasn't sure what day it was, and a friend was going to get him a clock that had that information, but in the meantime, he was still able to use the phone. I got the time and temperature number, and so he religiously called it every day to be able to get that. So that was really nice. And then not remembering whether you took them or whether you missed them. And when I was really sick about 30 years ago, a lot of my treatment protocol was more holistic with supplements and vitamins and trying to keep track of all those. And I finally had to make myself a little chart. You think you're going to remember, but then you get distracted, which we talk about. There's such huge things. And then there's also being, you know, maybe taking the wrong dosage or being given the wrong dosage level. And my mom had some stuff that was packaged in DocuDose, which is, no, it wasn't. I'm trying to remember. Okay, switch back. She got some medications, and my family was in town and saw that it was different, but they just called and they said, oh no, it's just a generic, you know, version of that. Well, instead of giving this 83-pound woman 5 milligrams, it was 100 milligrams.
Yikes. Yikes.
And she almost didn't make it.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
I mean, so, I mean, those things are really important with, you know, the medications.
You know, years ago at our other assisted living, many years ago, there was a gal that her family, she moved in at the urging of her family after she took her medications 3 times. She forgot that she had taken them. She put herself in a coma.
Right.
So it's very, very important. I mean, it's life and death.
It really is. And you don't know. You're not in people's medications.
Right.
And if you're not there observing, you know, so we're going to give some tips a little later on, but like I said, we're going to talk a little about finances.
Right now, talk about finances now. Yes.
All right. First of all, it's your private business.
Yes.
So who knows your finances? I mean, you know, you're doing your thing and you have your own expectations in your life. And what I've seen often, like let's say if someone's had a mini stroke and they come back pretty well, and then they might have another mini stroke and they come back, and then something major happens, and then the family has to get into the checkbook and start you know, paying the bills for them, and they can trace back to when those mini strokes happened. They started having trouble with the finances, but never said anything because nobody looks at it. I had one gentleman in therapy once where I was seeing him for something else, and then I wanted to double check because I knew he lived alone and his wife had done the bills. And when I went through some of the stuff, he couldn't add. And he got very upset with me and basically asked me to leave because he didn't want to deal with it. He was just so upset with what was going on with his wife. Now, whether that was the result of maybe some, you know, beginning stages of dementia or it was just depression or whatever, but I picked up the phone and called the daughter and I said, this is a red flag and you may want to supervise, get involved a little bit. I'm not saying you need to take it over, but there could be something coming up down the road. I saw a family once and they'd gotten shut-off notices. The woman lived alone and everybody checked on her. I mean, it was a great, great family. And she kept getting shut-off notices. Hello, after the second shut-off notice, because it can happen to any of us, you really want to take a look to see if this is the person that should be paying the bills or double paying, and you know, that can be an issue. I mean, years and years ago, I put the car payment in the house payment envelope and so forth. And both banks cashed the checks for things that weren't even made out to their bank. And then I get a call from the mortgage company because it was twice the car payment saying they were delinquent. And I'm going, huh? You know, so we all can do stuff, but you know, if that's an ongoing thing and no one's looking at it. And then I've heard instances of investment decisions. So it's like, well, gee, the stock market's not doing well, so I'm going to get rid of everything, or this sounds like a hot stock and I'm going to go do this. And if a person with dementia doesn't have the same judgment, you know, they can wipe out the money that they may have been able to use for their long-term care or for in-home care or whatever is needed. And then the other thing is that they're having trouble writing and spelling. So one woman was doing her checks and the family said she was fine. Well, I watched her make out a check. You couldn't read any of it. The numbers were hard to read, and the money amount, you know, she wanted to be independent with that. But those are things to look at because, again, you could lose everything. And then also fraud. But then what if a person has vision problems, excuse me, or they're online and they've got tremors and they're hitting the wrong money amount and there's nobody checking it? There's, I mean, this is the abbreviated list. That's why I want you to go to the blogs if you want information that I can send you to on that, because these are red flags, big time.
They're huge red flags, and both of these topics are potentially, could be potentially disastrous for a senior and for a whole family. Can you give us a few things if a family member has come home, we're at the holidays times, if they're noticing things, they're frightened, they weren't expecting this, they didn't see this happen, what do they do? Where
or
do
they don't
they
even
start?
know to look at it.
Exactly.
But that's why we did driving in these two as the ones before the holidays, because families are coming in and, you know, everything's fine. You talk to your loved one on the phone and they can carry on a conversation and they ask you what's going, you know, they're fine. But these are the things that, you know, if someone has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia, or you're noticing some significant memory problems, the medications probably need to be supervised, okay? The second thing is very often, some of these older adults are still able to drive because it's mild dementia, or someone's taking them and dropping them off to an appointment, and then they come out of the appointment and you say, well, what did the doctor say? Oh, nothing, everything's fine. I had a woman, the medications kept changing. I had to call the daughter and say, you need to send someone in with her, or you need to have the doctor's office call you with what those changes are, because your mom is no longer capable of reporting that information back. That's huge. Sometimes you can only give them what they need to take because they might get into other ones. I have someone I was seeing recently, and someone's coming in to do med reminders with him, but the family set it up for a month, and so each has its own box, and those are locked up so that they're not there, so we don't do Monday of one week and then Monday in another box. You know, there's so many issues that can be definitely a problem. Also, there are some prepackaged things that you can get, and I found that to be helpful at a certain level. And then you get to a level where it just isn't what you want to do. And some of the people that I see have a lot of medications that they're taking. I had one woman that would always forget because she'd fall asleep. And she'd forget her night medication because she'd go watch TV. She lived alone, and that was an important medication for her. And then just real quickly is the thing that sometimes they're swallowing problems, and they're choking on them, and they should be taking only one at a time. I mean, that's just an area to pay attention to and let the doctor know, because there might be some other things going on with that.
Now, Kathy, very quickly, you talked about if someone has a diagnosis that their medications would need supervised. You're talking by a family member or a friend of the family or home health.
Companion service,
companion service, or even an assisted living if need be. So
and
there is help out here for families.
And I've seen in one of the independent living facilities in our area, there's a woman that goes around, and she is actually hired to go from room to room for different residences who are no longer really able to be responsible and then report back to the family. So I mean, there's many options, but you got to be aware of what's going on.
All right, well, our time is short. Can you give us a little bit about finances, some tips for families?
I don't know, you got some I can borrow for Christmas?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay, so we talked about the checkbook situation. So I think if someone is having some medical problems, it might be a good idea beforehand to say, you know, if you ended up, you know, being incapacitated for a little bit and had to have surgery, how do you want to handle this, and where do you keep this? And, you know, just kind of, you know, do you keep a checkbook? And not that you're going to, you know, take over anything, but that can give you an idea of what's going on. The other thing is, if you don't have a financial power of attorney, and I had this happen, you know, with a friend, you know, this woman just made all kinds of financial decisions that were not in her best interest, but because no one else was on the account, he wasn't responsible for calling, you know, and talking to someone. This was startling to me. I had a woman who came out of the hospital, and she lived alone, but the family was very involved, and it was, I don't even know what this is, but it's like all of her stuff was deposited into something that's like a debit account, like a charge card type thing. She came out, I had no idea what her PIN number was. Think about all of that information that can be lost, and it was weeks before they were able to get access to her money to pay for her medications and anything like that. So that can be a real problem. And a lot of people don't want to give up the checks. So it's like, you know, having someone double check it, you know, and just say, we'll do this together. So,
Kathy, thank you for choosing these two topics today, which are so important to families and just so important to safety. Please, at the end of the broadcast, watch at the end. You can get the information on the website and the blog there, and contact us. Kathy, give us our homework. Give us our marching orders for this week.
Just pay attention. If you have a loved one, just observe. Just observe and see if there's something, and then go to some of the resources that are available to try and find out what to do. And our quote is, "No one is useless in the world who lightens the burdens of another." Charles Dickens.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thanks.
It was excellent. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be here next week. Stay focused during the holidays. Pay attention.
Have fun.
Have fun. Don't ignore the red flags. And now go have a great day. Thank you.